Shalom, friends. Akiva here with Israel in 5, and today is Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, a day in which we remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust simply for being Jews. This is also a day to remember the thousands of Holocaust survivors who are still with us in Israel. And remember that many of them are struggling. Many of them, even after having seen the horrors of the Holocaust, cannot make ends meet, don't always know where their next food or meal is coming from. And that's where Meir Panim comes in. Meir Panim has incredible services and programs throughout the country to directly help Holocaust survivors, but they can only do it with the generosity, because of the generosity of people like you. So please, I invite you to go to israel5.org/donate or click on the link below to open up your heart and to give what you can to help Meir Panim help Holocaust survivors in Israel, to share with them not only food and medicine and resources, but also dignity and honor. So please, israel5.org/donate or click on the link below to directly help Holocaust survivors in Israel. Thank you so much. I want to talk today about another interesting aspect of Holocaust Remembrance Day here in Israel. It's different than the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is in January. The International Holocaust Remembrance Day is on the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, which makes a lot of sense. That was a real powerful day, an important day, really marking the ending of the war, World War II, and the Holocaust, the savage Holocaust against the Jews during World War II. But Israel chose a different date. Israel chose this date, which comes out obviously in April, because of a different, very significant event and moment during the Holocaust, not the ending of the Holocaust, but this date coincides with the launching of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in Poland in 1943. This was a significant moment, a significant event that unfolded over a few months' time, but really saw the largest and the most well-organized act of resistance against the Nazis. It started in January 1943 when the Nazis came in once again to liquidate many Jews from the ghetto. In the Warsaw Ghetto, there were almost 500,000 Jews being kept there in prison-like conditions, cramped into a small area of the city of Warsaw. Multiple families living in apartments, barely any food or resources, infrastructure collapsing within days, if not weeks. And the Warsaw Ghetto was set up very shortly after the beginning of the war. And in 1942, in the fall of 1942, summer into the fall of 1942, the Nazis started to liquidate the ghetto, meaning taking those remaining surviving Jews and bringing them to death camps. Already by that time, half of the Jews approximately died of sickness and starvation and shootings in the ghetto by Nazis. But after that, in January 1943, the Nazis came back to continue the liquidations, to take more Jews and put them on trains and send them directly to death camps. And the Jews, by then, in January 1943, already knew what was going on. They knew that when the Nazis said that they were being relocated to the east, that was not true, and that was just code word for death camps. So some of the young Jews who were in the ghetto, who were many of them connected to different movements like Zionism, organized with whatever they had in their sphere at their disposal. They made weapons, they made Molotov cocktails, they smuggled in a few real weapons. And when the Nazis marched in January 1943, they were shocked and they were surprised by armed resistance by the Jews. So much so that the Nazis retreated. It was an incredible day of celebration for the Jews. The Jews knew that the Nazis would be back, and they came back in April 1943 to carry out a more organized liquidation. But the Jews, the armed Jews, the resistors, the Jews who were part of the resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto, they too were more prepared and more organized. And they separated themselves into teams spread out throughout the ghetto. And when the Nazis came back in April 1943, the Jews put up a fight. They told the remaining Jews in the ghetto either to join the fight or to go into hiding. And they launched this armed resistance for a second time, a second wave of armed resistance against the Nazis. And though it was a tough fight, and it was a fight that they knew really that they were never going to win because they were up against an organized, well-trained, and well-armed army. They knew that they needed to fight for their own dignity and for the dignity and for the honor of all the Jews who were already murdered by that time by the Nazis. And the truth is that they held out for an entire month. They held out for a month of fighting, which is almost as long as the entire country of Poland held out for at the beginning of the war in 1939 when it was attacked by the Nazis on September 1st. So even though in the end, the Jews who were part of the armed resistance in this Warsaw Ghetto Uprising were defeated, it still was an incredible thing that they did and a major accomplishment. One of the organizers of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Mordechai Analevich, wrote in a final letter that he wrote before taking his own life because he knew the Nazis were coming close and they would take him and do horrible things to him. He wrote in this letter that the uprising, that the resistance, the revolt went way beyond their wildest imagination. And what they did was a major moment in Jewish history. And if they had to do it all again, they would do exactly the same thing. And this is the event that Israel chose for its Holocaust Remembrance Day, because they didn't only want to remember the Jews who were taken to the slaughter, to the gas chambers, to the death camps. Of course, they were remembering them as well. Every single Jew was being remembered from the Holocaust. But the Israeli government also wanted to remember the resistance. They wanted to remember the rebellions, the revolts. They wanted to remember, right, and make sure that the next generations of Israelis remember that there was also armed resistance. There was also standing up. There was also fighting back against the Nazis. They wanted Israelis to know the entire story. So often outside of Israel, when people think about the Holocaust, learn about the Holocaust, they only think about Jews were taken to their deaths. And yes, unfortunately, that was a big part of the Holocaust. But another big part of the Holocaust was resistance. And the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was the largest example of armed resistance against the Nazis, but it was not the only one. There are many examples of armed resistance, even spiritual resistance, Jews standing up against the Nazis in all kinds of ways. And that is why Israel wanted to mark its Holocaust Remembrance Day on this day, the anniversary of the launching of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. So that part of Holocaust history was not forgotten. Thank you so much, my friends, and be well.